Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Ann Marlanza, and I'm a Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Wellesley. Welcome to our 2019 opening meeting. I want to thank the Wellesley Free Library for co-sponsoring this event, which is being recorded by Wellesley Media. So please tell all your friends that they can pick up the link. It'll be available on our website, on the League of Women Voters website, as well as through Wellesley Media. The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. Our membership is open to all, regardless of gender identity. Membership forms can be found on the table over here. Please consider joining us in making democracy work. We have many interesting programs throughout the year, and I just want to mention a couple. Our very next program, which is a week from tonight, is our annual Wellesley Meetup, FaceTime with your elected officials, Making Democracy Work. And it is hello? Okay. It's your opportunity as a resident of Wellesley to talk informally with your elected officials. There'll be someone from each elected board there, including Board of Selectmen, the Library Board of Trustees, School Committee, Natural Resources, etc. It's going to be from 7 to 8:30 at the Wellesley High School cafeteria. This is very interesting, Mike. Okay. What am I doing wrong? Okay.
All right. I'm just going to give you another one.
Oh, she's going to give me, okay. Tonight we're going to be learning about ranked choice voting. I hope that everyone has had a chance to have their cookies and has voted. Is there anybody that still has their ballot on them? Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I know how wonderful the library is. I'm not going to complain about the technology of the library. I wonder if yours is working. All right. Okay, the League of Women Voters only takes positions on issues after intensive study. In 2005, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts developed a supportive position on the concept of instant runoff voting. In 2018, we updated this position, acknowledging that ranked choice voting is now the common term. The League position is that the winner in single-seat elections should be required to obtain a majority of the votes cast. The League supports the use of ranked choice voting in all elections, federal, state, and local, with 3 or more candidates in which a single candidate is the winner to ensure the winning candidate receives a majority. We have 2 expert speakers here tonight from Voter Choice for Massachusetts, Mark D'Alessandro and Christina Knowles, and to help us understand how ranked choice voting works and what benefits it offers in the election process. They will also share efforts currently underway in Massachusetts. First, we're going to hear from Mac and then Christina. Mac is the executive director of Voter Choice Massachusetts. He is a political operative who got his start in politics at the age of 12 when he went door to door on Harold Washington's first campaign for mayor of Chicago. Since then, Mac has developed and executed many innovative and successful community and voter engagement programs. His field programs have been utilized on many campaigns around the country, from municipal races to presidential campaigns and everything in between. In Massachusetts, Mac worked on the campaigns of the late Mayor Thomas Menino, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Edward Markey, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, and the Coalition to Protect Mass Jobs. Mac has over 20 years of experience in a wide range of issues and electoral campaigns at Greater Boston Legal Services, Service Employees International Union, NARAL, and since 2012 at Democracy Partners, a national political consultancy in which Mac is a principal. Mac has an undergraduate degree from Rutgers University and a law degree from Boston College Law School. He lives in Canton with his 2 children, Sophie and Atticus. Christina Knowles has 13 years of experience in government affairs, electoral work, and nonprofit and public sector executive management. She has issue area experience on a variety of issues pertaining to gender equality. Advancing women and girls is her life's passion. Christina serves the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Voter Choice of Massachusetts, where she runs the coalition working to bring ranked choice voting to the Commonwealth. Prior to this role, Christina served as the finance director for the same organization and directed the multi-million-dollar fundraising effort. Christina has worked in Washington, D.C., where she served as the interim director of public policy and programs for Protect Our Defenders, the only nonprofit in the country exclusively dedicated to eliminating rape and sexual assault in the United States military. She has been at the helm of several political and advocacy organizations focused on gender equality, including serving as executive director of the National Organization for Women and as executive director of the Boston Women's Workforce Council, Mayor Marty Walsh's groundbreaking First in the Nation initiative to end the gender-based wage gap. Christina has also worked in the State House as executive director of the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators and as a legislative aide and chief of staff. I'd like to welcome Mac D'Alessandro and Christina Knowles.
Thanks, Ann Mara. And boy, you know, I didn't realize that our bios were going to be read. It's almost like hearing your own voice on tape. It's just like, ooh. Good evening. So you guys are a test audience tonight. We had this running joke in the office that our previous presentation, if you sat through the whole thing, you could actually sit through the presentation and then vote on the ballot question in November of 2020, all in one sitting. So we've condensed it. So at the end of this, we'd love to hear your feedback on what you think of this. So what I'm going to do is run through a little bit about what ranked choice voting is, a little bit about how it works, and then I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who's going to fill you in on the efforts we're undertaking today to make this a reality in the Commonwealth. So what is ranked choice voting? We like to think of this as a very simple reform in the way we vote. In its simplest terms, I like to think of this as something that gives us a greater voice in our government and more choices when we go into the ballot box. This is a very familiar picture. This is the ballot as we know it today. And what this requires us to do is to choose between a candidate we really like and the one we think is most likely to win. How often have folks felt put in that position as voters? And what we're told by the political apparatus is don't waste your vote. But yet we're made to perform this impossible calculus. With a ranked choice ballot, we actually get to choose the candidate we like the most, knowing that our vote can transfer to our next choice if our first choice is eliminated. The other way to think about this is ranked choice voting gives us the benefit of backup choices. My kid, as I struggled to explain this concisely, my kids, Sophie and Atticus, gave me a great analogy that I like to use. They said, Dad, when we go to the ice cream smith, we have other flavors in mind in case our favorite flavor is not in stock. So that's a great way to think about ranked voting. And as you can see, this is how our ballot gets filled out. One of the big knocks on ranked choice voting from those who don't like it is that it's too complicated. And I feel it's time we give voters a little bit more credit than that. Does this look complicated to anybody? Did anyone have trouble indicating which cookies they liked and the order they liked them? Right. This isn't that complicated. So how does this work? As Anmar said, one of the key features of ranked choice voting is that in order to win, candidates have to get a 50% majority of support from the voters. If no candidate, however, gets 50% of support from voters, the last place candidate gets eliminated. And all the second choice votes for that candidate get moved, transferred to the next choices. Does that make sense? And that's when this instant runoff process begins. So here's a sample of some election results in a ranked choice format. And as you can see, in the first round, no candidate achieved a 50% majority. If a candidate, by the way, if a candidate had achieved a 50% majority in the first round, guess what? Same thing as happens now would happen in this case. Election's over. You've got a winner. But because no candidate achieved a majority, what would happen is the last place finisher, Charlie Napoli, would be eliminated. And you see his second choices get reallocated. So some folks went to Barbara, some others went to Abby, and then in the third round, David Salam is now the last place finisher. He's eliminated. And what happened when those votes were transferred is that finally we have a winner, somebody who achieved a majority, and that's Abby Adams winning the election. So this reform provides a lot of benefits and to a lot of different stakeholders in this process. First, it benefits voters. We actually get to voice our honest preference. We no longer have to engage in that calculus. Who do I like? Who do I think can win? Is anyone struggling with that right now in a certain presidential primary? Yeah, I am too, and I'm a professional political operative. Imagine if you're a voter out there just busy with 2 jobs and raising kids. You may not have the time to invest in doing the kind of political calculus that I can spend all day doing. But with ranked choice voting, we don't have to do that. We get an honest preference, we get to voice an honest preference, and we don't have to worry about voting for a spoiler. You also ensure that your voice gets heard, even if your candidate, your first choice, doesn't win. And that's a very important feature of this reform, is that our voices are enhanced throughout the process. Campaigns also benefit from this reform. Candidates no longer have to worry about splitting the vote. And a great example of this, does anyone here remember the 2013 mayoral preliminary election in the city of Boston? That was the first mayoral election in which Boston was a majority people of color city. First time. And what ended up happening is that attracted a lot of candidates of color to that race. But what happened is those candidates of color shared a common base of support. So that vote was split a lot of different ways. And the way the preliminaries in Boston work, as they do in many municipalities here, the top 2 finishers move on to the final. What ended up happening in Boston was the 2 Irish guys moved on to the final election in Boston, Marty Walsh and John Connolly. So that's just an example of the vote splitting that can happen without ranked choice voting, and ranked choice voting eliminates that problem. This is another, I didn't believe this at first, but the other way that ranked choice voting benefits campaigns is it actually creates an incentive to campaign positively. Because we're no longer bad-mouthing our opponents, saying, vote for me, don't vote for anyone else. You're actually saying, look, I kind of share positions with these folks, the other candidates in the race. So even if you're voting for that person with your first choice, please consider me for your second choice. This is actually playing out in a couple of really important ways. We're actually seeing in data, voters are perceiving less negativity in campaigns, and we're seeing it have an effect on races because candidates have actually shot joint television ads in Minnesota saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I might be your first choice, and she might be your second choice. And she says, hey, I might be your first choice, and please consider each other for our second. And so the candidates are actually campaigning together as a sign of more positivity and conversely, much less negativity. There's some benefits that just accrue to everybody. We've seen a lot better representation in places that use ranked choice voting of women and people of color. The incidence of women of color running and winning elections in ranked choice voting jurisdictions is twice the national average. And of course, as we've said, ranked choice voting ensures that winners have the support of a true majority. A great example of this is the recent 3rd congressional district race. That's the North Shore and Lowell. The winner of that Democratic primary, and as in many places in Massachusetts, the winner of the Democratic primary often is going to be the winner in the general election. The winner of that Democratic primary won with 21.9% of the vote. Now, that's Lori Trahan. She's actually come out subsequent to that election and said, I am a poster child for ranked choice voting. This isn't a new idea. Ranked choice voting has been around since the 19th century. It's been used for over 100 years in Ireland and Australia. It's in use in over 20 municipalities and states in the United States. Maine in 2016 was the first state to use ranked choice voting for state and federal elections, which the first ranked choice voting elections they did were in 2018. And guess what? The sky didn't fall. Also importantly, some real important data points on how ranked choice voting was used effectively. In that election in Maine in 2018, first one they've ever done, 87% of voters ranked candidates on their ballots. So it totally debunks that notion that this is too complicated for voters to understand. Santa Fe, New Mexico also used ranked choice voting for the first time in their mayoral elections in 2018. And in that case, 88% of voters ranked more than one candidate, and 61% ranked all 5. So that signifies to me that not only are people understanding it, they're embracing this. They really feel like this is enhancing their voice at the ballot box. So I would like to ask Christina to come up and provide you all a little bit of an update on where we're heading with our campaign to bring ranked choice voting to Massachusetts.
Test. There we go.
Oh, perfect. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I have to start out by saying that the cookies were delicious. It was probably the hardest election I've ever voted on. And I said to Mac a little while ago that if my job is going to entail from now for the next 14 months eating cookies and baked goods at all these elections, the campaign's got to pay for a gym membership. I also just want to give a big thank you and shout out to Jacob Siltera. Jacob, raise your hand. Jacob, very graciously, he's one of our super volunteers and has been with the organization and the campaign for a long time. He came out tonight to help us run the voting software that is tallying your cookie election results. So thank you, Jacob. Alrighty, let's see here. So what's going on with the campaign? Where are we? Well, we are on track to collect 120,000 signatures by mid-November. Our field team is out in full force. They're all over the state. I know that many of you have been collecting signatures for us. Can you actually just raise your hand if you've, awesome, thank you. And how many of you have signed? Excellent. Good. You guys are an easy crowd. And we will give some more information on signatures after the cookie election. We have some stuff here for you guys. We are working to educate and mobilize voters to win in November 2020. It seems like we've got to wait quite a long time, but it's going to be here before you know it. And after we win, RCV will be used for federal and state elections starting in 2020. There are a lot of ways that you can get involved, and if you get involved, you get to work with me and my team, so you definitely should. Oh, where are we going? You can gather signatures for the ballot campaign. You can host a house party to raise awareness, and we've actually already had a house party in Wellesley, and it did really well. It's in competition right now with Newton and Truro. So if Wellesley does another house party, you can bump your town's tally rate up. You can make calls to activate our supporters, and you can also contribute to the 501c3 organization. That's what we would ask for this evening. We do have some donation cards over on the table. Your donation would help us mobilize volunteers, continue to educate voters, build partnerships. We're looking to get a coalition of, several hundred organizations and influential individuals. So we're going to do a quick Q&A, but before I do that, I just want to give you a little bit more detail on some of the stats that Mac had mentioned about women and RCV. As you heard before, my whole background has been working on women's equality, so I just want to read two quick stats. You heard that cities with RCV have more than double the national average, so that particular stat is 44% of cities with ranked choice voting have women mayors, versus the average of 20% in the 100 most populous cities in the United States. The second stat, and I particularly love this one, 50% is the average share of women on city councils in RCV cities versus an average of 25%, again, in the 100 most populous cities in the country. So I'll just let that sink in for a minute, because it's a good statistic. I am going to also give you a quick overview on the legislative work that we've been doing for about 3 years now, but really that began in earnest in this past January. Again, that work is done by our 501c3 and our 501c4 Voter Choice Education Fund and Voter Choice Massachusetts, Inc. It's confusing. The names are all similar. So has anyone heard about our legislative efforts yet? Yeah, I'm seeing some nods, some yeses, some nos. Back in 2016, the nonprofits filed a piece of legislation called the local option, is what we call it amongst us. And what it would do is it would pave the way for municipalities to use RCV in their town or city elections. Currently, it's a whole production. You have to file a homeroom petition. The entire legislature, all 200 members, have to vote on this. You've got to get it through the entire process, so it's really onerous. So the bill that we put up would really just codify and simplify that so that the municipalities have a much easier path to adopting RCV. So, we sent in some testimony. We were doing constituent visits with legislators, and that was pretty much it. This past January, as we were looking to really gear up the legislative advocacy part and also get the campaign going, hiring political operatives, myself and Mac included, we decided to take our work to scale and really show that we were serious. So I put my lobbying hat back on and led the organization's effort to get some really great lead sponsors and co-sponsors for the local option bill, and we actually filed new legislation too, which we call the state and federal bill. And that bill is exactly what you will see on the ballot. It's the same one that would allow RCV for state and federal elections starting in 2020. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've led a lot of legislative campaigns, done a ton of lobbying on a variety of different issues. So I said to the team, well, we're a brand new organization on Beacon Hill. Most people haven't really heard of us because we had a low profile the last session. This is considered to be controversial. It's considered to be complicated, although we would disagree with that. And just the barrier to of education was high. So I said, we're probably going to get about maybe 24 co-sponsors, be sort of the usual suspects, the really, really progressive members. Well, I had to eat my words a couple of weeks later, which I love doing, because we had 83 co-sponsors right off the bat. And I still, to this day, it's my favorite story to tell. I can't believe it. And all the other political operatives that Mac and I know in Massachusetts, friends and colleagues of ours, this is just such an unusual thing to happen. And what it does is it really indicates that there's an appetite up there, even amongst the legislatures, who of course are incumbents. And, we didn't know what kind of reception we would get, but it just shows that there is an appetite for improving our electoral system. In July, we had a fabulous lobby day. How many of you were there? Great, I see a couple hands. We had 322, I think was the exact number, of RCV supporters come out in droves across the state for a small nonprofit that we had one of the biggest presence on Beacon Hill in terms of lobby days. And again, that just shows the wealth of support that we have from our base. And we had tons of legislators that came through as well. And we're hoping that we will soon get a hearing date, at which time we will make sure to inform the League of Women Voter Wellesley leaders and hopefully see some of you there. So I'm going to pause now for questions. Do you want to MC it, Mac, or? Okay.
Tabulate this by hand, or does it require a computer program? Because the math, it's going to be tricky. You can't do it by hand.
Great question.
I have this one.
Oh, great.
So, yeah, we were out at the Association of Municipal Clerks meeting a couple weeks ago, and some of the clerks, you could see the terror in their faces. They're like, oh my, how are we going to do this? So yeah, it is, and there still are a number of communities in Massachusetts that tabulate by hand.
With your system.
But we have a way to do the tabulations. The secretary is sitting on $50 million in what are known as Help America Vote Act funds. We have more money in Massachusetts in HAVA funds than any other state in the country. So we are in the process of upgrading all of the machines, the tabulating machines, throughout the Commonwealth. And there will be accommodations made for those hand count towns. I want to just clarify one thing that Christina said. This would be on the ballot to bring ranked choice voting to Massachusetts in 2020. We wouldn't start voting with RCV until 2022. And that's really important because we need that time to educate not just voters, but election officials and authorities, and give us time to get the machines and the technology in place.
Is it a good idea to have everything done electronically? I thought there was a drive for us to do it like when you're cross-checking, to have it both ways. Can you repeat the question? So I prefer you repeat it because you have the better vocabulary.
You have your mic.
So the question is, isn't there a push, and is it, and if I'm misstating this, please correct me, but is the concern, is there a push to do more kind of hand tabulation because of security concerns? So look, the truth is, our elections are not really in jeopardy because they're hacking the machines, right? And all these, because we currently use, the state uses a secure T1 line, right, to transmit results. This is it's not on the internet. The machines themselves are self-contained units, and all the data goes onto a card that is physically placed in the machine. So the likelihood of that system being hacked is actually very low. We've heard, and we've actually polled on this too, there is concern among the electorate about interference in the election. But what we've got to be clear about is that those concerns are about outside forces influencing the information that voters receive as they work to make up their minds about who they're voting for, right? So that's the much greater threat is the disinformation campaigns that a lot of nation states and other actors are flooding our system with. Okay, whoa, lots of hands. We're going to go this way.
I just want to follow up on the question because it's my understanding that you can vote like we do in Wellesley on a hand card that will then be translated electronically, but the hand card will still exist.
You're still going to fill out a bubble.
Okay, all right. So your concern about not having the backup of the hand card is something that it's going to be, because we will have the cards. Okay, it's going to be translating. It's not all electronic, so we're not going to have that as the problem, as I understand it.
Yeah, and forgive me if I misunderstood. We're not going. We're not moving to a system where you walk into a booth and start
Yes.
pressing, because that is a system that.
Yeah, we're going to have a paper backup. The paper backup is not going to be eliminated. Does that help?
Yes, but you can't tabulate that by hand.
You can.
No, you don't tabulate.
Especially if you don't get the 50%, then you have to move everyone up. That'll take so much time. That's only.
A couple days. Australia's been doing it for 100 years.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's a good question.
Long before there were machines to do it.
Yeah.
Understood.
I think,
Remember, it currently takes about a week to officially certify results of elections anyway. So we should just all have that in mind. Those results that we clamor for at the 9 o'clock, an hour after the polls close, are all unofficial results. So.
I think for questions, what we're going to do is if you can just say your question as loud as you can, and then Mac will repeat it because it's hard with the microphone.
Is it?
A little bit. I don't know if I can be everywhere, but.
I have a good loud voice.
I'll run with it if you want.
Just as a case study, I'm hoping you're familiar. What happened in Maine in the congressional race? What happened in Maine with the congressional race? Just so I can understand it better.
Yeah, so it was a multi-candidate race. There were at least 3 candidates, which is what. If there are only 2 candidates, obviously it's not going to be a ranked choice election. There were 4 candidates I'm seeing. So in the first tally, the first round, no candidate. The Republican candidate was ahead, but he did not achieve a majority. So that triggered this. So the lowest lowest vote getter was eliminated, and the second choice votes for that lowest place finisher were redistributed to their second choices. And what happened in that second round is that another candidate achieved enough of those second choice votes to achieve a majority and was declared the winner. It flipped it. But what we believe is that was actually a better reflection of what voters in that district wanted. So that's what happened, and we've seen other instances. I mean, great example of how that might have played out also in a race I'm sure we all remember. I know I do. Was the 2000 presidential election, right? And do we remember how many votes Ralph Nader got in Florida? Does anyone remember offhand? It was just under 100,000 votes out of millions cast in Florida. So what we have is the benefit in that election is exit polling, which showed that a plurality of Nader voters would have voted for Al Gore as their second choice. So if ranked choice voting had been in effect, in that election, that result would have flipped, because George Bush was slightly ahead of Al Gore in the first round of counting. We're going in the back, and then we'll come up front, and then we'll slip over to this side.
So 2 questions. I just want to clarify that this ranked choice voting is for both primaries as well as the final election.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. In the primaries, must you still register for a party, or is it open so that you can vote for people from different parties?
Yeah, it doesn't change those rules. And we've actually had some interesting conversations with other folks in the democracy reform movement. But it does. The primary system, as it's currently structured, would still exist as it is. It's just that ranked choice voting would be an option for those primary elections, but it would still be a closed primary.
So it seems the ranked choice voting is clear and an obvious choice, and I'm very pleased with your presentation and all, but let me play devil's advocate a little bit. Suppose if instead of wanting the positive result, you want the negative result. That is, there are 7 lousy candidates and 1 good one. Doesn't this sort of, I only want the good one, I don't want any of the 7 to win. Yeah, but the 7 bad
You do not have to rank.
Well, no, but everybody else is participating in the ranking, and the 7 folks will probably, one of them will probably end up.
Well, then you're forced to do what we do right now anyway, which is the lesser of the evils, right? So you'd have to undertake that same kind of thought process, just in kind of a different way. Right. We'll come back up here. We're finishing that back row, and then.
Hi, so does the opposition for ranked choice voting break by party lines, by incumbents versus, where does the opposition come from?
This is what keeps me up at night. I wake up sometimes at 3 in the morning and goes, who's the opposition? So a couple things. One is, before we became a ballot campaign, we were an advocacy organization, a nonprofit, and we have an advisory board that's made up of kind of a veritable who's who of folks from across the political spectrum. We had libertarians, Governor Patrick, former Governor Weld, former Lieutenant Governor Kerry Healy. We've got Green Party folks, so we really do encompass the entire spectrum. I think that we have not seen any express opposition form, and that makes me nervous. I like knowing, I like having somebody to go against, because then at least I know what I'm up against. I think that the greatest threat to our success is going to be folks who don't get this. If we don't do a good enough job of educating folks, because the natural inclination in a ballot question environment is, if you don't understand it, vote no. Status quo. So it makes it incumbent upon us to get out there and make sure that people understand what we're doing.
And I just want to add one thing to that. The League of Women Voters in early polling and recent polling that we've done has come out amongst the voters we surveyed as the most, the most trusted source for listening to what they should be doing at the polls. So that's really impactful. The League name carries a lot of weight amongst voters.
On election reform.
On election reform.
Mac, what is the status of the legislation that was filed in the state Senate and the Congress?
So Christina, you want to?
Yeah, sure. So it's been assigned bill numbers and whatnot. In January and February, we received the 82 co-sponsors and have had a few more people sign on since. Right now, it's just sitting around waiting to be assigned a hearing date. Which, we're hoping we might get one before the end of the year. We don't know yet, but we will, keep you all informed as soon as we find out.
Can you explain the difference between going through the legislature and then going on the ballot? Why there's a backup of going on the ballot, just so everyone...
Yeah, sure. Mac, do you want to take that?
Well, the simple question is, it's exceedingly rare for new legislation to pass in its first time out. And we think it's critical for the national movement for ranked choice voting to build immediately on the momentum that was started in Maine. So we're worried that if we just, sat down and waited for the legislature to act, they might not, and then it's 4 years or 6 years before we see any activity here. So we decided not to wait. And in some ways, by making it clear that we're going about, because the entire legislature at this point is well aware that we're gathering signatures and working to get on the ballot next year, we might actually be able to motivate them to take some action. Because they might be of the mind that, hey, it's better maybe if we do something that we can control rather than letting these folks go out and do what they want.
And just to give you a little perspective, it's the average to pass a non-controversial bill in Massachusetts is 6 years, percolating in the legislature. So, like I said earlier, I was blown away by the amount of support we have that just does not happen for a new org, a new issue, complicated, controversial. So we definitely had a curveball thrown at us in a really good way, but we're pursuing both tracks so that we have options and solutions all over the place.
But I want to say, because I know everyone in here is politically active, there's we're very data driven, and there's one piece of data that we don't have because it doesn't exist. There's no quantitative data that indicates that ranked choice voting is a greater threat to incumbents relative to anyone else. All of the power of incumbency still exists, right? Their name recognition is higher. They typically have more money than their challengers. So those things don't change, and therefore, even in a ranked choice environment, they still enjoy advantages. I'm letting Anmara just kind of work the.
I'm next. I have the microphone. I have two quick questions, both simple. First of all, this gentleman here asked about it. He wants to vote for one person and doesn't like the other four who are on the ballot. And you said something about the lesser of two evils or something, but my question is this: what's to prevent him from giving that person he wants to win his first, second, third, and fourth votes?
That immediately exhausts the ballot. So there are steps built into the process and into the ballot question that prevent people from gaming the ballot in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My other question is, could you go back to the second slide about where you were showing us how you moved the third and fourth people? I might have a simple question, which is, I didn't understand, was it the person who was knocked off first, was 50% of his votes are split evenly?
No, it kind of depends on the second choice
Well, it's
votes.
not the second one, it's when you started moving the votes around.
All right, hold on, let me get there. Oh.
It's a really wonky question, I just have to know the answer.
Yeah. So let me get back to so this is the first one here, right? And 35, 40, and 20, and in this example, and then 5% there. So 3% went here, right? So it doesn't happen equally. It's not proportional. It just depends on who the second choice votes were for. For the people who voted for Charlie. Right?
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
So it's only the Charlie voters that we're dealing with here. So once Charlie was eliminated, everyone that voted for Charlie first now gets their second choice activated.
Yeah, this is, I'm still not understanding how Charlie gets, it looks like his second choice was 50-50. I don't understand it. Sorry.
So in this example, so 35, 40, and 20%. So Charlie got 5%, right?
Yeah.
So in this, 1% went over to Abby, 3 went to Barbara, and 1% went to David.
Why?
Because those were respectively the second choices, all of Charlie, second choices of Charlie's voters once Charlie was eliminated.
I still don't understand.
Here, let me
Their
say.
first choice got their
so
first.
just for example, so let's say you voted for Charlie first and you voted for Abby second. Well, once Charlie's eliminated, your vote for Abby counts, and so your vote moves to Abby. As opposed to Charlie gets eliminated and your vote is eliminated. This way, your second choice is now important. And if Abby were to get eliminated, your third choice would be important.
So let's say both you and I voted for Charlie first, right? And Charlie, because he was the lowest vote getter, he gets eliminated. I had David as my second choice, but you had Abby as your second choice. So now my vote gets transferred in the next round to David, and your vote gets transferred once Charlie's eliminated to Abby. It's a single transferable vote.
Where get a second vote.
It just says on that cookie ballot that you filled out.
No, I'm fine. Go real slow.
This is the ballot that you'd fill it out. You do this all at once. You don't come back and do it a second time, right? So you're doing it all at once. You're indicating, so you voted for Charlie, first choice.
One vote goes to Charlie, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So when Charlie gets eliminated, though, because he was the lowest placed vote getter, your vote transfers to your second choice. But only if your first choice is eliminated. You fill this out all at once. And then the runoff happens instantaneously.
So that's an example of Charlie's vote.
Right. This is the ballot.
That's his individual ballot.
It's your individual ballot.
Okay, but I'm voting for Charlie. It's my ballot.
And then David third and Abby fourth. That's how this person voted.
Okay, now, why, go real slow now. I got one single ballot there, and my man, how do I know my second choice would have been Barbara Miranda?
You chose her.
I know that, but how did it get added to her vote, her first vote?
Because your first choice was eliminated.
So there's software, there's computer software that just does this.
So let's go through it again.
So 5% of the, Charlie gets a small percentage of votes. But one ballot, you take that one ballot and move it to another location?
If that first choice is eliminated as the lowest vote getter, yes.
So that, all of the vote, all of Charlie's votes, they would go to Barbara Miranda as the second choice.
Only your ballot, only your.
Well, you know what? Yeah, we'll run through when we do the cookie election, maybe this will help. Because we're going to run through the cookies. And that will show how the votes get transferred.
All right.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, in each round, and so the first round, they tally up everyone's first choices. Only the first choices. Okay? Once that happens, the person who got the lowest number of first choice votes is eliminated. Right? If no one got a majority. If no one got a majority.
Those people, their second vote gets spread around, but you can't tell until the computer tells you where the second vote was.
Right, it'll then look at, for everyone that voted for Charlie in the first round, when there was no majority winner, then what it'll look at is, okay, for everyone who voted for Charlie, who was their second choice? And then redistribute to everyone's second choice.
Charlie's second choice goes to wherever the total votes were. If there's 100,000 votes for Charlie, and 30 of them go to Adams, and the rest of them go to Barbara, because his second choice was Barbara.
Not his second choice. We'll do the cookie election, and if it's still not clear, then we'll continue to. I want to make sure we get a few more.
So I have a question that's unrelated to this, but I just wanted either Christina or Mac to clarify when this ballot initiative passes, will it cover municipal, state, and federal elections, but not for the presidential election?
Right.
So that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes, it will not include municipal elections. There was some concern that to allow municipalities to figure out their own path for elections, we were concerned that there would be an uprising among municipal clerks if this were foisted upon them. So it only applies to elections that are administered by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. So state elections, and that includes the constitutional offices, state legislative elections, and then non-presidential federal elections. So House and Senate, statewide.
So this doesn't have anything to do with the presidential election?
No, and here's what happened, and I want to explain, give you a little bit of the strategic rationale behind that decision. we did quite a bit of research when drafting the question. And the attitude among voters generally was a real concern about applying this immediately to the presidential. It was counterintuitive to me. I thought that would have been the election that folks would have been most excited to have this applied to. Turns out not the case. Their support for ranked choice voting went down if this were applied to the presidential. And digging through that research, what we discovered is people want to, Massachusetts voters are a finicky bunch, and they like to kick the tires on things before they buy the car. And so they want to see how this works on these non-presidential elections before it applies to something with such high stakes. And in fact, that's exactly what's happened in Maine. So they got through a successful election cycle in 2018 using ranked choice voting. The sky didn't fall down. And now they have since gone back through the legislative process and worked to apply it to future presidential elections. And that could be the pathway here as well.
So this is sort of related. I understood it, and I may have misunderstood it, but am I correct that the bill in the legislature is basically to eliminate the home rule issue and allow municipalities to make their own choices? The ballot initiative is what we've really been discussing here.
Right.
Okay.
There is a companion piece of legislation that also does what the ballot question would do. So there's two pieces of legislation.
So there's a backup for
right.
And on that note, I just want to let you know that Senator Becca Rausch, who represents a portion of Wellesley, is one of our lead sponsors on the local option bill. Alice Peisch, Cindy Cream have not yet endorsed, so they have the other parts of Wellesley. So if you are so inclined, you can reach out to them and let them know that you would like them to support the issue.
Yeah, I have a question similar to the one the gentleman just asked. I happen to have lived all my voting life in Cambridge, which has successfully voted via proportional representation, which is ranked choice voting, since 1941. And a couple of observations. All of the incumbents love it because of the name recognition. I understand there's a home rule bill pending also for East Hampton. But the initiative does not include authority for other cities and towns without getting a home rule, a special bill like East Hampton?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what our so-called local option bill is intended to do, is to make it easier for municipalities to adopt ranked choice voting without filing a home rule petition or amending their charters.
As they should. I mean, in Cambridge, it's worked beautifully, and I can give you some more stories if you want.
Any other questions?
How do you handle a ballot where someone has made an error?
Hold on a second. You have to talk into the mic for this.
How do you handle a ballot where a voter has made a mistake? He or she has accidentally ranked two people as number two.
Yeah, great question. So two things. First, in all of the places that have used ranked choice voting, the rates of voter error are just about identical as they are now. So 99.5% of ballots there are no mistakes. When you do make a mistake, you can simply request a new ballot.
And in Cambridge, the ballot box will not accept a ballot.
Spit it back out.
It immediately rejects the ballot.
Was there one more? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm taking a lot of guff from my political operative friends in Maine because, usually I'm like, we're so far ahead of you guys. I can't do that anymore. It's really annoying me.
And Massachusetts, this is not just important for the state, but this is important for looking nationally, either to do a whole national sweep of RCV and going state by state going forward. If we succeed in Massachusetts, and we think we will, Mac and I can't have a loss on our resumes, right? So we're going to win. That will open the floodgates.
A lot of losses. What happens when you're, from lefty parents in Chicago?
But if we win, that opens the floodgates nationally for RCV to, be like a firestorm, either state by state or with federal legislation or whatnot. If we lose in Massachusetts, because this is really game time, right? I mean, it's kind of nice being the second state to do it after Maine because, we're much bigger than Maine, and Maine just doesn't have the same clout in terms of being first in the nation for all of the things that Massachusetts has been first in the nation for. But if we lose, that is going to shut RCV down in all states pretty much and nationally for the next 15, 20 years. So it's really, really critical for those of you who are, supporting RCV, supporting election reform. This is really high stakes.
We have the opportunity to more than double the number of people covered by ranked choice voting when we do this, which is huge.
Just a comment, the woman sitting next to me was from the Needham League, and when she left, she was talking about what a really sophisticated computer program this must be, and must be really super, and she thought it was really difficult, and I assured her, and I'm assuring everybody here, this is a really simple problem for computers. This is not a big deal by any means, in case anyone is thinking it is complex.
In fact, it'd be a fairly simple change in the code on existing ballot machines here in Massachusetts. So even though I mentioned that the Secretary's office is in the process of replacing and updating and modernizing all the machines throughout the Commonwealth, we could actually run ranked choice voting elections in Massachusetts today on the vast majority of machines currently being used with a simple change in the code.
And something else that I think is a really great factoid is Maine thought it was going to be, what was it, Mac? 1.5 million to administer their first RCV election, and instead it was $100,000, correct? $100,000. So it was not this, 1.5 million, which for Maine is a huge amount of money. It was six figures.
How many other states are taking action? You had that map of all the states, and there were a lot of ones that didn't have colors in them, but how many of those are thinking about it?
So I know that there's there's 21 municipalities. There are a couple of states like Iowa uses ranked choice voting for their military and overseas ballots if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because they have a caucus system, and if you're in the military or overseas, you have no way of really participating in the caucus, which is basically runoff by rounds. So ranked choice voting is the only way to enable those voters, to give those voters the same ability to weigh in on their choices and have their vote last round to round in that caucus system. What's the? Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, this is so it's in there. It's in there in the primary in the caucus, the primary caucuses, right?
But are any of the gray states thinking about any of this that you know of?
Any of the gray states? I know that Alaska is that on? Oh, it's already there.
There's legislation percolating in a dozen or so states across the country. I would have to pull up the exact.
And actually, New York City is voting on ranked choice voting next month. San Francisco and Minneapolis do it. Minneapolis and St. Paul. San Francisco. Amherst. Yeah, and this wasn't very popular after that debacle last year, I think it was. But the Motion Picture Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences uses it for Best Picture, and yeah. But then when they they screwed up a couple of years ago, and everyone hated the Best Picture choice, so they're like, well, we hate ranked choice voting now.
We also have the founder of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country, who's a huge supporter of ours. I don't know if we're going to share the name, but he got really involved with us because his company actually uses RCV to determine which research that they're going to undertake for drugs and whatnot as they're looking for their next development. So it's really pretty cool. A lot of unions use it. A lot of national organizations, National Association of Social Workers, National Organization of Women I used to work for. So it really is, it's widely used on an everyday basis. People just don't necessarily know it.
Yes,
Cookie election. Cookie.
Election.
Do I have an email? Yeah. All right. If anyone wants more cookies, there are more there. But you don't get to vote again. This isn't Chicago.
Jacob says it's going to be the most recent email.
Right.
He sent 2 by accident. Can't stand the tension.
Oh,
Not the right one, not the right one.
This isn't the right one? Oh, is it? Final, is this it? Okay. Oh, Jay, you gave away the punchline here, buddy, right up at the top.
Don't read it, just scroll down.
All right. Okay. Is everyone seeing what's happening here? So I want to just do the color code. So we're in round 1, and we can see that Chocolate Kiss is narrowly ahead of Molasses. I mean, I saw Christina attacking those Chocolate Kiss cookies. I was like, I think that's going to win.
They were good.
And that dotted line on the far right is the 50% line. So that's what. So what happens here? The lowest vote getter, oatmeal, which is I'm not a sweet person. I'm a savory person. So I would have been oatmeal, and my first choice would have been eliminated. So oatmeal gets eliminated in round 2. So everyone who voted for oatmeal, if their first choice was oatmeal, now has their second choices redistributed. And we see that some of those second choices went to orange cranberry, and some of them went to molasses. And to get a sense of how much, orange cranberry was at 11.1% and now is at 13.9% in round 2. Molasses moved from 30.6% to 36%. So molasses got the biggest chunk of second choice votes from oatmeal, which is amazing because they taste nothing alike. So now we see in round 2, orange cranberry, even though it got some of those second choice votes, is now still the last place vote getter in the second round. So it's eliminated. Also, and we can see here we now have a winner, right? Because all of those orange cranberries now went to Chocolate Kiss and Molasses. And in the third round, it would be their third choice. Because in this case, all of orange cranberry was eliminated, and then lemon was now the last place finisher, right? So the lemons fourth choices were now retabulated because in the third round it was now the last place finisher, and with that redistribution, molasses surpasses chocolate kiss to achieve a majority. So if we look at this final round with molasses vaulting to the top and achieving a majority, and look at where we started. Chocolate kiss was slightly ahead. So what we have here is the Maine congressional election in cookies. Oh. Yeah, question.
Why don't you take the second choice of the third round person that's getting eliminated? Why don't you take all those second choices?
It's got to be round by round, and it only is in each round you're only dealing with the subsequent choices of the candidate who was eliminated.
So you would want that person's second choices distributed, not their third.
No, because if they're I'm trying to figure out how to say this without being confusing. It really does have to go round by round. It's second. So
So Mac, if I voted for lemon first and molasses second, I'm over here. I'm talking.
Oh.
If I voted for lemon first, and so that's why I'm up on the lemon thing, then my second choice was, let's say it was oatmeal. Does that bring oatmeal back potentially, or?
No, your ballot would have been exhausted. Jacob, is that?
Mike? So if you had lemon first and then oatmeal second, then your vote would then transfer to your third choice. So it goes to the next valid candidate each time. And what we're looking at for these, so for lemon, when it was eliminated, those candidates would go to their second choice. If it was molasses, it looks like it was some to molasses and some to chocolate kiss. But somebody had, I think at least one person had oatmeal and then orange cranberry. Then it would have gone to their third choice. And if their third choice was lemon, then it would go to their fourth choice, molasses or chocolate kiss. And everybody here voted for 4 or 5 choices. So everybody got full expression.
It goes to your
Next valid choice.
Exactly.
next available.
Right, that makes more sense.
So it goes to second choice and then the third of those that are not eliminated.
Right. Is it, now, I'm just curious. How do folks feel about the outcome? I mean, these are cookies, so and you probably like them all. But imagine if this had been in real life with candidates and on issues you care about. You're upset.
So I think it's funny. It feels wrong, but I know it's right.
That's so much of my life. So I can share with you just a little bit. I don't want to give too much away, but we're starting in I don't think this is. I can say this because I don't think it would be all that much of a surprise to anybody. We're in a tricky place as an issue and as a ballot campaign. Normally, when I've worked on a few ballot campaigns here in Massachusetts. I like that first batch of polling to say we're at 50, 55%. 57%. I'm even happier if we're at 60%, because especially when you're pushing a yes question, as we are, typically you have opposition, and that opposition is going to drive your numbers down. So you want to start high and battle to minimize your losses. We're starting at about 48%. Now, my suspicion is that polling is very tough on this issue because people don't know what they don't know. So I think that's the position we're starting in, but it's not what I would consider to be a position of strength. But it underscores the importance of us raising the resources that we need to get out there and really educate people. And we're not going to wait, as most campaigns, until late summer, early fall to start communicating and engaging voters. The plan that we're developing will start engaging voters pretty early next year. And we'll start with community forums and rooms like this and online stuff and door-to-door canvassing. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was asking, to kind of, in terms of what folks feel about it. I mean, if based on what you know now, is this something, and, be honest, I'm a grown-up, and
something that occurred to me, as particularly as Ann Mara said, it feels wrong, but it's so right. I think
Is that our new tagline for the campaign?
No. I mean, actually, this came out. One of our consultants is she's driving me crazy with this, because what came out in our polling, the thing that motivated people most about ranked choice voting is that you didn't have to use it if you didn't want to. But I was like, that can't be our slogan. Ranked choice voting, you don't have to use it.
Well, I think tonight we have our new one. We can fire our media consultants. This is great.
It just occurred to me, probably everybody in this room liked all five, one way or another. I think you would feel differently about this if it was a situation where you liked three of them and really disliked two of them, or something along those lines. Then the results would feel better. You would feel that the person that was liked by more than 50% won.
I mean, I would ask everyone to think also about how you have felt after some elections under the plurality system in which we currently vote. I mean, I have felt absolutely terrible after some elections about either the choice that I've made getting totally obliterated and my voice being lost, or somebody I really don't like, I don't, look, if you've supported the current president, that's fine. But there is some research that shows that, in all likelihood, President Trump never would have emerged from the Republican primary if ranked choice voting had been in effect. He won several key primaries with, under 35%.
You know what else this would eliminate was, if you think with the 2016 presidential, with Hillary and Bernie in particular, with the primary, remember people were swapping votes across state. If you give me your Hillary here because, give you my Bernie, to try to engineer the election. I mean, this would stop that type of thing, which is really problematic.
Well, does everyone remember why Bernie chose to run in the Democratic primary? Because it would have been political suicide to run as an independent. He would have been described as a spoiler, much as Ralph Nader, who had a magnificent career as a consumer advocate, was pilloried after that 2000 election. He was called a spoiler in that election. And Bernie just said, you know what, I've got to run as a Democrat. But here's what happened, and here's what the impact that decision had on the general election and the voters who were so supportive of his candidacy. When he lost the primary, there were 2 million people who voted in the Democratic primary in 2016 and who voted in 2012 in the general election, 2 million folks that did not turn out in the general in 2016 because they were so pissed about what happened in the primary election.
I personally think this would solve more problems than getting rid of the Electoral College. Do you get many questions regarding that?
We don't get a ton of questions about that, but I agree. And let me just be clear too. There is no single reform that is going to be a silver bullet that's going to solve all our problems. Ranked choice voting is not that thing either. But I like to say that ranked choice voting is my penance for having spent 20 years trying to get more people to participate in a system that is fundamentally flawed. So I believe that this is a system that actually results in a better process for candidates, for voters, and for our democracy.
One of the things Mac and I say a lot when we tag team these events together is that, you know, we both have a lot of progressive issues we could be working on, or a lot of issues in general that we could be working on. My whole background is, you know, women's gender equality. Mac has worked on a variety of things with a large focus on labor. And we feel like this is the place where we need to be. This campaign is what's most important right now. And I think that says a lot. I also want to say one thing. Who heard about the Fall River elections? Yeah, that is just such a perfect example. I mean, it is a nightmare. I feel so bad for the poor voters of Fall River. I mean, it was great for us because we got about a bunch of national press off of it. But it really is just the epitome of what RCV would solve.
So I have what's probably a really badly formed question. So ranked choice voting had its day in the sun a while ago. I think it's awesome, but a lot of the systems were repealed really on sort of ugly racial and anti-communist grounds. So it's an interesting time for this to be coming up. Just kind of curious if I mean, Massachusetts is a pretty safe place, but I think the current administration, not that it's going to get directly involved, but people affiliated with the administration seem to have no problem race baiting and other things. Have you guys thought about how you're going to counter that? If there's another whisper campaign to say this is all racial block voting and you can't do this, or else the majority is going to lose control of the electorate.
Yeah. So one of the ways I mentioned earlier, one of the strategies we're gonna undertake is we're gonna start engaging voters much earlier. One of the things that the research has told us so far is that if we can get to people first and explain what this is and how it works and the benefits, and inoculate them against any opposition message, we have our numbers go way up and we can hold them. Where we get in real big trouble real fast is if the whisper campaign or any significant resources materialize on the opposition side and start getting out there with message. Now, here's the other reason we decided to do this, and it's so important that we do this in 2020, is most of any potential opposition out there, and I don't care where it comes from, by the way, but most of the resources are going to be focused on much bigger things in other places. I don't think we're going to see a lot of resources sunk into an issue campaign on election reform in Massachusetts in a presidential year.
Sorry, one more question. Do the results get reported round by round so that if I want to make a statement by voting for one of those four, the world gets to see, hey, 15% of the voters really liked Meryl Applebaum as their first choice. So would that be the case, that it would be reported round by round, or do you only get the final results?
So we did leave, and this is part of the delicate dance that one must do with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, we're going to leave some of this to the discretion of the Secretary. And I will say this for the Secretary of the Commonwealth here in Massachusetts, he is really respected nationally as an administrator of elections. So it's we want to make sure that his office has some voice and ability to shape how this actually plays out. We've spelled out a lot of the mechanics, but things like that I think are going to be left to the discretion of the.
And by the way, Secretary Galvin supports RCV.
I'm going to grain of salt that comment. With the fact that he publicly came out for that when he was being challenged by Josh Zakin.
I would just observe that in Cambridge's municipal elections, the city's election commission does print out and distribute broadly for anybody who cares, and the local newspapers pick up the round-by-round transfers.
I know that you said you're going to do a lot of educating people through gatherings like this. What about TV and print? I know that there have been editorials in the Globe and other places, the Times, I think. But say Jim Browdy, that show on every night at 7 o'clock, and
Well, he's got the radio show in the
and he has
daytime and the TV
daytime-
show at night.
Yeah, I mean, shows like that, and even segments on the news. Is anybody working on that?
Yeah, so we'll do quite a bit of earned media. Our communications director, so happens, is currently on maternity leave, but she'll be back, and we'll do a lot of earned media appearances on shows like that, and editorial board meetings. We're gonna so TV is, unfortunately, Greater Boston is in one of the most expensive media markets in the country. It's extraordinarily expensive, and it's really inefficient because you pay premium to talk to everybody, including people who, it just drives me nuts. So it's oh, the shows, yeah, the earned media stuff. We're gonna really aggressively pursue that.
And we had been doing that. Oh, I'm sorry. And we have been doing earned media for the past 3 years with the nonprofit arm. You know, the 501c3, the 501c4. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of appearances on just exactly the shows that you're talking about. You can check out our website, see some of our previous media hits. But it's really been substantial. And so now that we are, have started the ballot campaign in the new organization, we have already got off to a great start with a lot of the press we've gotten, and that will continue to explode, as Max said.
After the Fall River thing,
Yeah.
I got my first ever quote in the New York Times, and my dad is walking around in Chicago with a printout of the clip and showing it to everybody. He intentionally bumps into people on the L and says, "Oh, sorry. Oh, did you happen to see this?"
So I think we're just about time to wrap up. Is there one final question? So if not, I do want to introduce my co-organizer on this, Pam Cubbins. And I want to thank Pam, who is only a member of the league and not on the board, for coming to us with this idea. And please, other members, this is something you can do. Please come to the board with ideas. Pam wanted to say.
Well, I want to say I'm a passionate volunteer for RCV, and I want to wholeheartedly thank Mac and Christina for this wonderfully informative presentation tonight. Also, there are 3 of us who have clipboards with signatures for the ballot petition, and we're going to be coming through up and down the aisles and asking everybody to please sign just to put this issue on the ballot. And on both sides of the room are opportunities to volunteer for both the League, which is an incredible organization, and also with voter choice. And there's a load of things to do that would make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was
Oh,
great.
good. Oh, I'm still hot here.
It's such, the education piece is such a challenge.